Hello everyone, in this video we are going to discuss the UPSC Prelims paper of 2021. In this video we will be discussing the previous year paper with the same strategy that I followed in my prelims in the real-time scenario, so that it will help you to evaluate how you have to keep logically thinking as well as keeping your nerves calm along with the knowledge bank that you have gained over the years of preparation and how you have to apply it in the given examination. A very important thing I would like to tell you before we begin, that irrespective of your preparation being good, bad, excellent or worse, you have to go with an open mind in the examination, first with the acceptance that despite your preparation being 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 and 10 being the highest, still you have to go with a humbleness that some questions might be there which you might not know, or some questions may be from certain topics which you happen to know or which you happen to believe that you have mastery in. But certain questions from those topics can be difficult and you don't have to fight an ego battle there. You have to skip if you don't solve it in the first go. Second, you have to go with the acceptance and preparation. You have to go with a prepared mind that certain number of questions, irrespective of the level of preparation, will be out of the box for everyone, for all of the aspirants. So in those questions you don't have to simply neglect them, rather you have to read those questions with a very open mind, because certain questions could be such that they might be solvable through the given information within the question itself, through common sense, through your elimination technique, or certain information or clue might be hidden within the answer yourself, within the question itself. So please have open mind that even if you know the question, you have to still read all the options and the question itself very, very carefully, and you have to go with a prepared mindset that certain number of questions would be difficult irrespective of my preparation level. So you have to keep your nerves calm while solving them. You have to keep your mind open that certain number of those questions which you don't know can they still be solved through the information given within the question, or through logical reasoning, or through some elimination technique. Now we will begin with the 2021 paper. Which one of the following effects of the creation of black money in India has been the main cause of worry for the government? Option A is diversion of resources to. Now the key word in this question is main cause of worry. Of course black money leads to various issues in the economy, but we have to compare all these options and we have to select which is the main cause of worry for government of India. Diversion of resources to the purchase of real estate and investment in the luxury housing. Yes, this is one of the issues, that most of the black money is diverted in the real estate. That's why there is a huge escalation in the real estate prices, that they have become unaffordable. In second option is investment in unproductive activities and purchase of precious stones and jewelries. Of course this is also a concern, because if the money is invested in precious metal, it is used for consumption rather than being invested for generation of other productive economic activities which would generate employment and provide salaries, and therefore create a large donation to political parties and growth of regionalism. Of course, a major portion of black money has been diverted to the donations of the political parties, with the exemptions and the limitations on transparency with regard to donation to political parties. Then comes the loss of revenue to the state exchequer due to tax evasion. Now, in this question, all these options do contribute to the problems which are created by the black money, but we have to pick out the option which is the main cause of worry to the government of India. So, what is essentially black money? Black money is the undeclared income that people have, because if you declare your income, that would become liable to be taxed by the government. So essentially, to save or evade taxation, people hide their income, and the income which is hidden becomes the black money. So the unaccountable income becomes black money. So the main cause of worry because of black money is essentially the loss of revenue to the state exchequer due to tax evasion. So D would be the answer. Now moving on to next question. The money multiplier in an economy increases with which of the following? Okay. Now money multiplier we know is a measure of money supply in the economy. There are many ratios through which we measure what is the money supply in the economy. It is essentially to gauge how banks create more liquidity or more supply of money with the reserve money they have. If you look at the options, increase in cash reserve ratio in the banks. If cash reserve ratio increases, so banks would have to set aside certain more percentage of their deposits to fulfill the regulations mandated by RBI for robust banking. So they would have less money to give as loans, which would create a ripple effect of product which could be deployed for generation of productive economic activities. So in this case, the money supply would not increase, rather it would decrease. So this option is incorrect. Increase in statutory liquidity ratio in banks, again it is same as CRR. If SLR increases, the banks would have to keep more percentage of their deposits to meet the regulations of the RBI. So they will have less money to give as loans, which could be for productive economic action. It will not increase the economy. Now third option is increase in the banking habit of people. Okay, if the increase in the banking habit of people means that either people are saving more and depositing those as FDs. Okay, so people are depositing more and more money into the banks. So savings with the banks is increasing, that banks would further give as loan to be employed in productive economic activities. So essentially by this, the supply in the money supply in the economy would increase. Now coming on to option 4, increase in the population of the country. This has no direct or indirect relevance with the increase in money supply. So we can cancel out option D. So answer would be C, that with increase in the banking habit of people, money multiplier. Okay. With reference to the Indian economy, demand pull inflation can be caused or increased by which of the following? Now we have the keyword is with reference to Indian economy. We have to consider Indian economy in context while deriving our answer. Demand pull inflation and can be increased by which of the following? We have to select the correct option. Expansionaries. So demand pull inflation is that when the demand of products would increase but the supply would remain constant. So in that case your inflation would, the price of the commodities would increase because demand would be greater than supply. So people would be willing to pay more. Okay, so we essentially have to focus on things that would increase demand. Expansionary policies would is when the central bank would reduce the repo rates. This means loans would become cheaper. That is, more and more people would avail loans, so more money with people have more money in the hand. They might employ it in certain productive economic activity that would lead to generation of employment, and with employment it would be and the people employed would get salary, so they would have more money in their hand. So essentially demand would increase. Again, fiscal stimulus would have same effect. It will lead to more money within the hand of people, so essentially demand for goods would increase. Now inflation indexing wages, of course, if wages are indexed with inflation, then wages keep on increasing with the inflation. Let's keep it aside for a second. Then higher purchasing power, of course, if you have higher purchasing power, your demand would increase. Rising interest rate, no, this would not be the case, because if interest rate rise, loans would become expensive, people would not avail loans, therefore economic activity would stagnate, and thus the employment generation would stagnate or decrease, and there would be no consequent increase in the salary. So the disposable incomes or the purchasing power of the people would stagnate or reduce, so that essentially the demand would stagnate, so it would not lead to demand to inflation. So now you have to choose the correct option. So by this, whichever option includes option 5, we can cut it down, and answer would be option A. Which one of the following is likely to be most inflationary in its effect? Okay, we have to choose the option which will be most inflationary. Repayment of public debt, borrowing from the public to finance a budget deficit, repayment of public debt. This would be a positive move, even because it would reduce the debt liabilities of the government. So all in all, it would be a very positive move. Second option, borrowing from the public to finance a budget deficit, so it would lead to crowding out of the private sector. Borrowing from the banks to finance a budget deficit, again then banks would have less money to give loan to the private sector, and the private sector economy would reduce, so essentially the economic activities would reduce, the employment generation would reduce, and demand would not increase. It would be not inflationary. Creation of new money to finance the budget deficit, of course D would be the answer, because you are increasing money supply without any consequent increase in the GDP or the production or the economic activities. Other things remaining unchanged, okay, market demand for a good might increase. We have to see when the demand would increase of a certain good. Price of its substitute increases. Substitute is a good which you can replace it with. Suppose you can coffee and tea are substitute goods because they have the same function. So instead of tea you can have coffee and vice versa. So say if the price of the coffee increases and the price of the tea remains constant, so the demand for tea would increase because it is, in comparison to coffee, tea's price has remained constant, so it would be cheaper. So more and more people would be willing to buy tea. So it would be correct option. Price of its complement increases. Complement is a good which is needed with that goods. Say sugar and tea. So without sugar you cannot have tea. So if the price of sugar increases, then price of tea would also increase, hence the demand of tea would reduce. The good is an inferior good and income of the consumer increases. Now inferior good is such that if your income increases, your demand for inferior good would reduce. Inferior goods are goods which people prefer when they have lesser income. So as your income increases, your demand for inferior goods would reduce. If your income reduces, your demand for inferior goods would increase. So if a good is inferior good and income of consumer increases, then the demand for inferior good will reduce its price fall. Okay, so let's say tea. If the price of tea falls, we know the demand curves go like this. If the price of the tea, then its demand would reduce because demand is inversely proportional to own price of the good. Okay, now which among the following steps is most likely to be taken at the time of economic recession? Cut in tax rates accompanied by increase in interest rates? No. Increase in expenditure on public projects? Yes. Increase in tax rates accompanied by no. Reduction in expenditure? No.